Hello, beautiful people. It's your guy, TC Hughes, and I want to welcome you to Not Easily Spoken Podcast. Let's drop a bomb for that right there. Listen, y'all don't understand how good it is to say that, because right now, right there, that was history. Yeah, that was history. Listen, this podcast was created to inspire, to ignite, and to just have a lot of fun discussing what is happening in the world we live in today. Some things we're going to agree on, some things we're not, but together we will have dialogue that makes a difference. So please bring your dreams and your current reality, and let's talk about those things not easily spoken. All right, today we are discussing mental health and faith, two polarizing topics and segments of our world that we often separate. Yet if we take a close look at both of them, they complement each other as well as support each other. Particularly our discussion will center on today the alarming truth and the spike that is silently happening within our churches, particularly suicide amongst faith leaders. These are men and women called to represent the cross, not to replace Christ on it. But for various reasons, they are dying in despair, they're dying in hopelessness, depression, and defeat. Why is this happening? And what can we do to stop our leaders from bleeding? Now, the best conversation, I believe, offers multiple angles to a single thought. And to help us do that today, I have a heavyweight in the room with me. Let me tell you about him. He received his BA, Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. Urbana.
Yes, sir.
And is presently pursuing a doctorate in education from Dallas Baptist University. He also has a Master of Divinity from McCormick Theological Seminary. He has demonstrated his passion for education and sustainable development as a teacher, English development head, vice principal, coach. I assume that's basketball.
Basketball and football.
He's from Chicago, so I assume it was basketball because all the brothers in Chicago, they think they're nice on the court like MJ.
Just like that,
right? Advanced placement and international baccalaureate coordinator, principal of Clay Academy right here located in Dallas, Texas. He has established a Bible college on the campus of UIUC and served in short-term missions covering 3 continents. He is the Truth family, the campus pastor for the Potter's House of Fort Worth, a husband, a father, and most importantly to me, an all-around good dude. I want y'all to welcome, family, Pastor Patrick E. Winfield II.
Yeah. Wow, thank you.
I tried to bring him in like Steve
so
Harvey, so I just wanted to make sure I did him the right
cool,
way.
Man. That was dope.
Did I do you justice?
That was dope. I almost had to look around to see who you were talking about.
No, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you.
Now, just point of correction.
Okay.
I didn't start a Bible college.
Okay.
I don't know if that's prophetic or I'm going to start one. Maybe one is in my heart to do. But it was a Bible study.
Yeah. Okay, college study. You getting there. It was a progression.
Yeah.
Okay, so listen, Pastor Winfield, I want to thank you so much for your time, for being here.
Pleasure.
We're talking about a topic that, a lot of people don't talk about because it's kind of taboo to talk about the church, the place that we're supposed to go to recover, could also be the place that people are silently struggling.
Yes.
And why is that? And particularly the people that are called to lead. They're leading while bleeding, trying to represent Christ, but often sometimes even struggling from the Superman complex or super person complex.
Yeah.
And the case that we're talking about today, there was a young man in California.
Yes, sir.
30 years old, Pastor Andrew Stokeland.
That's right.
He was a mega pastor for the Inwood Church right there in Chino, California.
Yes.
And he passed away.
Yes.
Particularly committed suicide. And he attempted suicide in the church. Now, why and how could it be that a young man at the age of 30 with a loving wife, 3 beautiful boys, a church that he said in his last message was thriving, but yet he was hurting in the process. How could this be? Now, we do know some things about him. His father died 3 years prior, and he was struggling with grief.
Yes.
He even tried to take a sabbatical, but the pressures unknown forced him to come back.
Yep.
He openly talked about his mental problems and his mental struggles, but yet seemed to still be facing anxiety and depression. And he couldn't win. Now, was this a choice or was this a circumstances? But we don't know. But we do know that he died and that he was hurting and that he was bleeding and doing it in plain sight.
Yeah.
So why is this? How is this? What's going on? And again, what can we do to help our leaders? I got a couple of questions for you. Yeah. I want to throw out there from your expertise, and I wanted to see exactly what your thoughts are. You ready to roll?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
First of all, I'm going to hit them with another one. Pastor, what is it like to be you? And why do you do what you do? Curveball.
Yeah, that was a huge curve. I was ready to talk about Pastor and Chino. What's it like to be me? Man, that's a huge curveball.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you why I throw that curveball at him. Because that's what I'm going to do to all my guests. This episode 101, so he has to get everything first. But I want to do that in particular because I think it's real important for when people say Pastor Patrick E. Winfield, sometimes they just stop at the pastor and they don't ever look at the Patrick E. Winfield that's associated to that.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important, even as we talk about Pastor Andrew and just the overall body and just faith in general of all sects, it's important that we start by first asking, what is it like to be you, why you do what you do, your passion, your heart, because that will tell us on the back end why it's so important that we need to connect mental health with, of course, our faith, because to disconnect those will be a disservice to the human experience.
So let's disconnect all of those particular pieces that you've mentioned. First of all, I don't pastor because people will say you are a pastor and you are called and you love it. Mm-hmm. That's why you do it.
Yeah.
Reality is certain elements of being a pastor I was doing before I was a pastor, and I was doing it because I love people. I love impacting people's lives in various capacities. Education was my background, and so I love impacting kids and impacting families through the process of education. I got into education because as a student, I was that student sitting in class, bored out of my mind.
That makes two of us.
And did not want to be there and hated school. And I had a teacher that inspired me, and so I loved English because I had a great English teacher that inspired me. And it would have been the same if I would have had a great science teacher or a great math teacher. And I wanted to have that kind of impact on a young person's life. When I got into the classroom, teaching was not enough because I could only impact my students. And so I wanted to be the principal so that I can impact all students in my school. And so my heart and desire to impact young people, to touch the next generation with inspiration and with education and things that's going to inspire them to be their best selves, was the reason why I got into all of it. It was my heart. My heart wanted to just help people. I did not want to be a pastor, even though I was called to be one. And those two things, people think that they go together. That just because you're called, you're doing something that you want to do.
Right.
But that's not the case. In most cases, to do the work of being a pastor is a sacrifice, period.
True.
Because you are called to serve Christ and to serve people. And in so doing, you're also at the behest of their own mindset and their own perspective on how you should serve them.
Uh-oh, now we're talking. Come on.
And that is a dangerous thing because it's very possible for you to, as a leader, live within the prisons of somebody else's mentalities. And if you're not careful, if you haven't done the work, the self-evaluation work, the self-introspection work. I'm not talking about ministry work. I'm talking about internal. Who am I? Why do I do what I do kind of work? Then it's very easy to be susceptible to other people's opinions and perspectives. And that is an issue that I think pastors face, right? Because you live within the opinions of other people. because we don't do the work.
Exactly.
Seminary work is different from introspection work. Intelligence, academics, education is work in which you're getting information into you, right?
Right.
And you process the information so that you can then in turn tell somebody about the information that you received.
Mm-hmm.
That's easy. The hard part about leading and the hard part about being me is to continue to do the self-work, the introspection, the thought processes, the getting away from everybody so I can think about why do I think this way and why do I do what I do and why did what that person said to me hurt me? Why? It's all of those why questions that I ask myself that me and the Lord just have those kinds of personal conversations.
It's interesting that you say that because a lot of times when, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this, I've noticed when it comes to spirituality, when life happens, we over spiritualize it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, and we'll have a mental issue or mental problem or something that's going on family or financially, and we'll pray about it.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when prayer is not enough, when you have prayed and the answer hasn't come, and each day you have to work out whatever that thing may be, and you're waiting on God, but God is waiting on you to put your hands to the plow and do some work too.
Absolutely.
So I think it's very important that we talk about that. As I've said before, that we, in a sense, separate the two so that we can identify them, but then bring it back together so that we can be made whole.
Certainly.
When it comes to mental health and when it comes to faith. So let me ask you, based on all that you said, and we're going to unpack all of that, how do you manage the multiple hats that you wear?
That's the thing. We step in a world in which everybody is pulling at you from multiple directions, and you've got to be very solid internally and spiritually to be able to handle the pull. The pull is great.
What is the pull?
Let's just go down the list.
Come on.
That's a great question. This is great.
That was his setup, and I threw it back at him. Y'all saw how we did that?
I love it.
This is what we do. Go ahead.
I love it. You have the pull of being a man. Manly responsibility means that everyone is looking to you to be strong, to be competent, and to be productive. That in and of itself carries a particular weight and responsibility to do that, because our role as men gives encouragement and impetus even for women and for children, for young people and for the communities. Build strong communities, you got to have strong men present
Yes, indeed.
to be able to do that. So there is that pull. And then there is the pull of being a husband, to be able to understand my wife in such a way. The Bible says to walk with our wives after knowledge. We were having a conversation on last night about how hard that is for men to walk with women after knowledge, because the two think differently.
True.
Right? There's this commercial out, and I forgot what it is. The man is at the grocery store, and he's putting all this asparagus into the basket. And then the wife comes along and stands next to him and says, "That's a lot of asparagus." And he looks at her and said, "Well, you said that you wanted a bunch of asparagus." And she looks at him like, "You stupid." And he's like, "Oh, right, a bunch.
A bunch,
It's
right,
already
right.
bunched
Bunched together, right,
together." And
Right.
so it was like, but you know, that's a perfect example of how men and women kind of think differently. And to be able to understand her and to walk with her after knowledge and to be peaceful with the relationship, you got to understand her. That takes time. It takes study. It takes observation. It takes introspection. It takes you sacrificing yourself to step into the world of somebody else so that you can know them. Then there's the pull of being a father. The vicissitudes of a young person growing up, either from being a baby all the way to being a grown man. And I have seen all of them, right? I've got an older boy, an older young man who's 23 years old. I got a middle young man who is 15. And I got a baby boy who is 12. Now, all of them are at different stages of life. So I've got to treat the 23-year-old a little different. Right, we got to figure life out.
Right, that's the stage.
Right.
That's the stage.
You know,
right
I
now.
just told him, you need to come home. You need to come home, because because we got to figure this out, and you can't figure it out being homeless.
Right.
I need for you to come home. So that's one world. You got the 15-year-old in which after I get finished with this podcast, I got to take him. I'm taking him to BJ's so that we can bond because he's 15. And 15 and 16 are your rebellious stages.
It's that crossroad.
That's that. I want to rebel, right? And so I understand that. But while he is in that stage, we've got to have some kind of connection and communication
yes,
so that we don't lose fellowship while he's doing that. He's going to respond as a teen. I'm going to respond as a father. But the problem with that is that if we're both responding as to where we are, we're disconnecting and not bonding. So we find ourselves doing more fussing than we're doing bonding. So this is an opportunity for us to bond. That's me coming into his world, right? Because that's what he wants to do. That's how he wants to bond. I want to eat at BJ's Market. Okay, well, let's go to BJ's. Then I got my baby boy. He's into basketball. That's his whole world. I was sitting there and I'm texting his coach because we got practices and tournaments coming up and blah, 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 blah. And I got to bond with him in a different way. And that's the pull of being a father. Add on to that the pull of being a pastor, preaching, teaching. You gotta make sure that you have enough information so that you can disseminate it in front of the people, because I don't ever want to give wrong information.
Or just be up there talking.
Bantering with nothing, with no substance.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you got to make sure that you're filled with that. That's another responsibility. It means that you got to be hearing and you got to be reading and studying all at the same time, even in your downtime. Right?
Yeah.
I require at least 8 hours to be able to do one sermon or one set study. 8, at least 8. And it doesn't require 8 as far as content, because I have a lot of content. I've been in ministry for over 25 years.
So your reservoir, yeah.
So I got a lot of knowledge, but it requires 8 because it may be something that I need to find out that is new and fresh, that deals with people's lives. Because that thing that you minister to or about on a Sunday or on a Wednesday could very well save somebody's life.
Absolutely.
So that's critical for me. So I need 8 hours of just pouring myself into a particular text or thought. And then you got to pray for people.
She said, and then, like, there's more.
Yeah, there's more.
Okay.
Then you got to counsel people. This week I had a few counseling sessions in which it went longer than an hour because even though I had it on my clock as to just be 1 hour, this situation
required more.
Absolutely, right? And you've got to give yourself over to that. And you got to give yourself over to young people that need to talk to their pastor. And you got to give yourself over to praying for people that may need prayer, not to mention your friendships and your relationships with people that may die. My grandmother passed a couple of weeks ago. My cousin passed 3 weeks or 2 weeks before my grandmother passed. So I'm ministering to families on both ends, right? Because you got to bring peace in the midst of grief. And then you have that, and that's one pool. Then it's the community leader. The community leader, because everybody expects for the pastor to be a community leader. What is the pastor saying?
Because that's the staple of the church.
That's the staple of the church. We got to impact people, not just spiritually, but economically, educationally, and things of that nature, which means that you've got to be out in the community to know what is happening in the community.
How to affect.
And how to impact it. You got to be able to, for lack of a better terminology, politic a little bit. So you got to know who to talk to, where to talk to, and you got to have meetings to talk to people, because the right person can bring you into the right room so that you can get the right information so you can bring it back to your people. That is a pool in and of itself.
Relationship building,
yes. Right? So take all of that, put that on the table.
And that's the pool.
And I have yet to talk about Patrick.
Yeah. I was gonna say, where's Patrick in all of that?
Right.
So it's in a nutshell, is that what pastors go through? Is that being a pastor? I ask because, I talk about all the time. It's being a pastor, and I've said many times, even in a blog I've written. Y'all go check out noteasily-spoken.blog. Can I plug my own?
Please.
Yeah. Y'all make sure to go out and read over at noteasily-spoken.blog. But I've said many times before that, in my opinion, humble opinion, that being a minister, pastor is got to be the most powerful position one person, man or woman, can have on the planet, because in one place you can affect someone's life mentally, spiritually, emotionally, financially. You can strip off the generational things that were there and introduce someone to their future all at the same time.
Yes.
And then what makes it so, as I call God, I say G, what makes G so smooth about it is that, God's work can go through you and talk to you at the same time. So while you're doing that and people are getting it, your own self-recorder is like, that was a good note. I got to think about that later on.
Exactly.
So I think it's so important that we have great leadership, but also great leaderships who are pastors. You being one of those, managing all that, putting all that together. Would you speak just a little bit as far as why it's so important that we have good leaders who are also good pastors?
Well, oh gosh, it's good stuff. Here's what I love about you. You are a great thought leader. You are a thinker. So your questions are not just surface, but they hit a very profound nerve. And so I appreciate your questions. First of all, let me say that just because you're a pastor, a good pastor, it does not mean that you're a good leader.
Exactly.
Pastoring is a spiritual gift and a grace that God gives to the church as a gift. That role of being a pastor is a gift, right? The person that says yes to the role is a person that's making sacrifices in order to do that. And that is a great gift. Leadership is something that you've got to train yourself to be able to do, because leadership requires a high level of conflict, a high level of accountability, and a high level of looking out for everyone to improve their life as well. And that requires a different level of thinking and thought. So I cannot do everything that I want to do. And I've got to be very careful at the words that I speak, because the words that I speak gives life or death.
True.
Right? So, and I've got to be open to questions. I've got to be open to rebuke. I've got to be open to scorn. I've got to be open to criticism. I got to be open to applause. And at the same time, I've got to make sure that I am not taking the applause too seriously, because the same people that applaud you would be the same people that stab you.
Assassinate you.
Assassinate you.
Yes.
This is leadership.
Okay.
When you sign up for being a pastor leader, you're signing up for all of that. The problem with many pastors, or with some, is that we come into it because we have a call. And we feel like because we make this sacrifice to people and for people, that people are going to always love us. And that is something that every person wants.
True. Human.
Right? It's human.
Yeah.
To want to be loved.
Exactly.
Right? And to be liked.
Right.
Very human.
Very human.
It is hard then for you to be hated for what you do, right? Because there is a call that's on me to say what God tells me to say. So when Jesus talks to Peter, he says, Peter, do you love the sheep? No, he says, Peter, do you love me? Love me, feed the sheep. He asked him that 3 times. The love was not necessarily about the sheep, even though you must have some level of love. The love was about, do you love the shepherd, the over shepherd, the bishop of our souls? If you love him enough, then you'll continue to feed the sheep, even though the sheep cause you great consternation.
Very true.
And frustration, right?
Yes.
Because there's something else that's greater than the sheep that is pushing you along, because the sheep really are bipolar. And I mean that from a metaphorical standpoint. Right. I don't mean that everybody is bipolar.
Because it's fickle, because sheep...
Very fickle.
Because sheep naturally, go opposite ways based on what their attention span is for the moment.
Boom. Exactly. So now imagine a pastor who is trying to lead sheep in this day, in this hour, in which you have all of the social media and you got preachers and speakers everywhere that's seemingly doing it big on high levels and blah, blah, blah. And then their sheep come back to their church and say, well, why can't you be like that? right? So you got everybody mimicking each other because you preach in skinny jeans and ripped jeans, and that I feel like I got to do skinny jeans and ripped jeans.
Right.
But you 50-something years old. Really? Is that really how you should be preaching? Or is that the language of another generation?
That's not your grace.
That's not your grace.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. And it's okay to be who you are, but it's hard to be who you are when the people that you lead want you to be somebody else.
I like the way you said that when you're hated, in a sense, because of what you love.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
And then to not be connected to who you serve, as far as people, but why you serving the God that you love. That's, you got to have that centerpiece, that anchor.
It is the most important. It is the most important thing. This I think, and this is the week of Passion Week that we're about to go into, but I think it typifies what leadership is. Jesus being on the cross, and he's dying for everybody that's around him. And everybody that walked with him that's not there at the cross because they're afraid. And everybody that's trying to gamble off his clothes because they don't perceive him to be the Messiah. He's dying for the thief that's on the right of him and the left of him. One who believes in him, the other one who believes in just being free and not in him. He's dying for the women that's crying at the cross. The young man whose name John is there at the cross too. And all of the naysayers that are there walking by saying, if you be the Christ, if you be the King of the Jews, how about you come down off that cross? You can save everybody else, but you can't save yourself. And in the midst of all of the murmuring and all of the stuff that's happening, he still maintains focus. And he does not say everything that probably he's feeling, because he does not allow for feeling to dictate his speech. And he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. It's a higher perspective of leadership.
Now let's talk about the lower perspective. The lower perspective is, I'm human, I want love, I want to be like. We talked about that. And for most leaders, the problem is when people perceive that you're strong, they never think that you ever get weak.
Oh, gosh.
Right?
Yeah, man.
And then to that also, because we want to be loved and we want to be liked, then internally we struggle when those who we want to know our goodness and know our glory either know our story or they know something about us that will prevent them from celebrating us in the way we want to be celebrated. What do we do with that low level of feeling so we can get to the higher perspective in Christ as leaders?
I need for you to keep me focused here, because
I'm trying to. Me too, because you're saying stuff that's getting stuff out of me. Come on.
Let me say this. This is the low level.
Okay.
Pastors, Barna did a research, and this is what it started. I had it pulled up so I can read it and make sure that I'm right in saying it. Pastors are more likely to express emotional and mental exhaustion, and nearly half of all pastors admit to having struggled with depression. This is according to a Barna study. The study also found that the majority of pastors, to the tune of 58%, experience feelings of inadequacy around their work. So they're doing the work, but they always feel inadequate about the work that they're doing. Pastors at the high risk of burnout feel unprepared in all aspects of ministry, including handling conflict. I told you leadership is about conflict. All pastors are not necessarily good leaders because they don't want to deal with the conflict. All right. But you got to handle conflict. That's 50% of the work of the work. Administrative burdens to the tune of 38%. In other words, just because I'm a pastor, it doesn't mean that I'm an administrator. I got a vision in my head and I can't put it in my hand. You know how frustrating that is?
Yeah.
I got a dream that I'll never be able to realize because I'm not an administrator to be able to administrate the dream that I have. And every dream needs administration. Every vision needs administration in order for you to see it come to pass, right? Delegating and training people. The average leader has got to spend more time delegating and training people, which means you yourself should be trained. Now I got to spend time training myself, and I got to spend time training the people that are around me. Who's got time, right? And then church politics. that the people that feel like they need to be and stay in leadership in your church or in your world are people that know you because they equate loyalty with faithfulness
Right.
and productivity. And just because you're loyal, it does not mean that you're productive. And sometimes, as a pastor leader, you're going to have to dismiss people from leadership positions who are loyal to you but not productive.
Or out of place and out of
And
season.
out of place and out of season. And if they got family, then everybody that's connected to them has got to go. That's the politics.
Right.
If you anger one, then all of them are going to get angry, and that's the politics. A lot of pastors don't want to replace that one, because if you replace that one, you actually got to replace 10.
That's the behind the cloth.
That's huge,
y'all don't
right?
see that.
And then
Wow.
the challenges in the whole leadership concept where that's concerned. Now, as a pastor, you cannot convey, or you don't convey. It's not that you cannot, it's that you don't. You don't convey all of the issues that you have with all of those things, because who can understand that level of what you're dealing with?
That's so important. So important, because one thing that I wrote, the piece that I wrote, Leading While Bleeding, that for the shepherd, when it comes to talking about what they're going to, they can't go to the sheep, because when you have different levels of responsibilities, it's impossible to have the same level of understanding.
Okay, here's the principle of leadership. And I don't know if it's good or bad. I'm still trying to work with it myself. And here it is. Everybody loves a hero. And within their leader, they need to find encouragement. And they can't find encouragement in a leader that is broken, or as broken and as depressed as what they are. So, because that's not heroic. The reason why we like Superman or the Avengers that's coming out and, all of this is because they are something that we aspire to be. Every hero that we may have, it's either Dr. Martin Luther King or Thurgood Marshall or someone else, John Maxwell, whoever. They're someone that we would aspire to be. However, we don't know who they be, because their gift is what puts them on the platform. But it is the weight of their character, or the strength and the dexterity of their character, that keeps the platform from crumbling over them. Because gift can put you on the platform, but character is going to determine whether or not you crumble under the pressure.
So let me ask you this. With that being said, are ministers today collapsing under the pressure of the cross? He looks at me like, no, I'm going. Or is it that we are collapsing? I say we, not me, excuse me. Are they collapsing?
Come on.
No.
You said it right.
No. Are they collapsing under the pressure of a failed character?
They are collapsing under the pressure of not a failed character, but an underdeveloped character.
Yeah, I like that.
Right. I don't look at preachers and leaders or whoever that falls, right? I don't look at them as failures. I look at a part of their character as being underdeveloped.
That's good.
Because if that part of their character was fully developed, then they would not have fallen.
True.
What made David a great worshiper is what made him a terrible father. Is it the failure of him being a father and the success of him being a warrior? Or is it the fact that that part of his life was underdeveloped?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because Jesse didn't look at him as being a full or true son. And so he didn't even call him in when Samuel asked for all of his sons. And then when Samuel comes in and anoints him, Samuel doesn't stay there and spend time with him. Samuel goes back to Ramah. So he's sitting there with an anointing, and his development in that area doesn't happen because he is always amongst the sheep, always away from people. Right?
Yeah.
He's got terrible people skills.
Right.
But he's a great worshiper, a great warrior. Right. But he's got terrible people skills. So when it comes time for him to submit to another father figure who's Saul, he can't even be great, because Saul looks at his greatness as a threat and starts wanting to kill him. And so now David is on the run. David does not have that area of his life strong enough to handle the raping of Amnon and Tamar.
Mm.
And so he doesn't know how to handle it. So he doesn't.
So he doesn't handle Absalom.
Right. He doesn't. He doesn't do conflict. Absalom is so angry that Absalom does conflict, but you don't even know how to handle Absalom. So when he is sent away, you don't even go and see your own son. Who does that?
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so it builds up resentment in Absalom. And even in that state, when Absalom is trying to split the kingdom, David says to everybody, don't kill him. Let's leave. Don't kill him, because he doesn't know how to handle it.
Mm. And if I must say, there was a part of Absalom that David recognized was really him.
Yeah. Well, oh yeah.
Yeah. That fatherless. Come on now, we would talk about that another time. But go ahead.
Oh God,
Yeah.
that was rich. Yeah, and so that part is underdeveloped. So when I say a developed character, your gift can take you to places and spaces, especially now when we have social media. There used to be a natural outflow of growth and development, so that you were not seen until possibly you were ready.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
If you had to be on somebody's stage, they didn't put you on the stage until you were ready.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can bypass everybody's stage, have your own audience, and then they will invite you to the stage because of the numbers that you now have, because they're inviting your numbers to the stage without even understanding that your character can't even handle their stage, right? So now you have a lot of leaders. Let's go back to the pastor in Chino Hills.
Chino Hills, right. Pastor Andrew.
I listened to his first sermon. Oh, not his first sermon, but the sermon that he had in the spring of last year.
Okay.
And then his last sermon.
Yeah, August 12th. Yeah.
I could hear that things were not right.
Wow.
Now, I don't fault him for those things, because church has grown, right? He's got growth. Every pastor that prays for growth is not ready for it. I would say it. Just every pastor that prays for growth and development is not ready for it, because the growth and development of your church, organization, institution, of the people means that you're going to have to grow and develop in your character, because more people means more mess. More people means more stuff, right? And you got to be able to handle all of the more stuff. So everybody that has great gift doesn't necessarily mean that they have the character to be able to handle the responsibilities that comes with the gift. That's number one. Number two, when I heard this is the detriment. The detriment is not necessarily of his suicide, even though that is so tragic on so many different levels that we don't even have time to explain.
Very much so.
But what the tragedy is, the people that said that they loved him
didn't see him.
Didn't see it.
Didn't see him. Yeah. Come on now.
Now, I'm not casting aspersions upon the people, because it happens many times in our households, right? Because we don't see our children and they're dying right up under our household, right up under our noses. Our problem is that we don't see each other. And we don't really love each other the way that we say that we love each other. And we don't appreciate each other the way that we say that we should. Because in doing so means that I am feeding you what you need in order to build your character.
Right.
So I hold you accountable for certain things. I tell you, maybe right now, instead of you doing this, you need to sit your hips down.
Right.
Maybe you need to say, no, but I got a gift. I got a calling. Yes, you got a gift and you got a calling, but your character is not going to be able to handle the weight of that. Sitting down does not mean doing anything. Sitting down means doing some introspection. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And what do I really think about this? Because people don't need false heroes.
Right.
They need people who can hold themselves accountable and hold everybody else accountable around them.
Yeah, it's important, because a lot of times what I've seen too is we love each other to the extent, not necessarily what we should mean to each other, but what we can offer or do for one another. We become, instead of the opportunity to love each other, we're looking for the opportunity to benefit off of each other. And so go ahead.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So everything is a business deal.
Everything's a business deal.
Right. It's a business deal. So we don't even do church anymore based off of love and koinonia and fellowship. We do church now based off of, oh, it's a business deal. I go to this church because, it's a good business deal. If I say I go to this church, it's good status. So
I go to the Potter's house.
Yeah, it's status.
Right,
It's status. When I first got here, I'm not going to say all the churches that were involved, but when I first got here and I was doing an interview with the Potter's house to be the principal, I checked into a hotel. And I said something to the effect of, "Hey, yeah, I know your pastor. I heard of your pastor. Man, he's a heavy dude." Something like that. It was, and she was like, "My pastor ain't heavy." Now, man, you didn't talk about my pastor. My pastor ain't fat. And I'm like, oh.
I mean, he's great at what he does, man.
That means that he's great at what he does.
Right.
Really? Why are you so defensive?
Right.
Right. It's that
set tripping.
It's a set tripping. So because everybody is running their particular gang and everybody is repping their color in their particular gang, right? So now churches are not churches anymore. We don't talk across church and denominational lines. We're gangs. We're spiritual gangs, and we got to protect ourselves, And to a certain degree, I understand the mindset, but to another degree, it's not healthy.
It's not at all.
It's not healthy because
where there's unity, there is strength.
Where there's unity, there's strength. And I've got to now not look at my pastor, my colleague, my co-laborer in the faith, my co-prisoner of the gospel. I've got to look at him now, not as competition, but he's complement. He's supposed to help build me up. But if I can't trust him to build me up, because he is capitalizing on my weaknesses and my falls and my failures, because he'll get more members if I fall.
Wow. Let me read this to you, Pastor.
Yeah.
It says, we can talk about the new wave of church that causes pastors to prey on each other. In a fight for fame and fortune, allies can become enemies. In the sphere of leadership on all levels, but especially in faith, the fight to stay relevant can cause contemporaries to become competition, hoping to seize on a weakness, looking for the opportunity to take the top spot, leaving trust amongst peers as a novel idea for pastors who often battle isolation. There was a study that came out through Soul Shepherding about pastors' lack of soul care and training. That study revealed that 70% of pastors do not have someone they consider a close friend. 50% do not meet regularly with an accountability person or group. 85% have never taken a sabbatical. Overworked, underpaid, over-scrutinized, underappreciated. Now, you don't have to wear the collar to understand those facts because we all have been in situations where we love people or love the job that didn't reciprocate that love back. But particularly pastors have a unique position because, in a sense, they live under a glass house, unable to breathe without boundaries. For whatever reason, they have to live according to the ideas of others. What do you say to that?
Yes, it's true.
It's true.
What do I say to the person that is in prison to that? Don't live for the success of it. Try to separate yourself as much as possible away from it so that you can get a healthier perspective. Now, that is hard to do. I'll tell you why.
Yeah, talk about the safe zones.
The number one reason why pastors don't take sabbaticals is because we can't.
Why?
Because the success of the church every Sunday through its giving and tithing and offering and all that stuff and people showing up and all that stuff is predicated upon the pastor being there.
Why?
Because people are in a place in which they need their pastors.
Why?
Because that's the human element. I gain more off of him or her being there. And that is and a part of it, another part of it is that we have not taught what is the role of a pastor. What am I supposed to be to you?
Yes, sir.
I kid you not, when I was the church that was a youth pastor in the city of Chicago. Those who know me or probably look it up will probably find out. But those who know me already knows. I'm not going to say any names or anything like that. But I kid you not, when he was gone, people would die. Literally. At the tune of like 3. It was a trinity. It was a running joke for a while. Like, Bishop's gonna be gone. I wonder who's gonna die. One would go, and we'll say, "Oh, okay, another one is coming." Boom. Oh, okay, another one is coming. Literally, there have been times in which I would call him and say, "You need to come home because I don't need anybody else to die." Literally. Wow. That is the way that people are connected to their spiritual leader. There is something that is inordinate about it. There is something that is natural, but there is something that is unnatural about it. And any relationship that does not have boundaries and purpose to it can be perverted.
Have we put our leaders on a unfair pedestal?
Oh, absolutely.
And forgot that they're human and they bleed just like.
And not just them, but we put ourselves on those pedestals. Right. And for some, they don't know how to get off the pedestal except to fall. Mm. See, you got to understand the psychology of people and the psychology of men and women in leadership. Sometimes the fall and the failure is not because they just had a faux pas. Sometimes
it's an escape.
It's escape.
Yeah.
This is the only way that I can get out of this. Mm-hmm. That either I fall and get out or I commit suicide and get out. Because I have no escape plan. I have no plan to talk people out of looking at me as their Superman and looking at Jesus Christ as that person.
So what are some of those safe zones that could help pastors hold it all together?
Number one, you got to get away. And I can't say that enough. True story. I give you 2 true stories. Number one, when I started my church in the city of Las Vegas, I did not have enough money to get away, and I didn't tell anybody that I wasn't rolling like that because I was bivocational. The church had just started. I couldn't command a salary from the church that just started. That's crazy. So I had to come every Sunday and every Wednesday. Boom, I just work it. Just keep on working it. Mm-hmm. Put my head down and work it. Me working as a teacher helped to save me. Because I literally, as the pastor, didn't want to wake up and come to church. Mm. And I would be depressed. I can't tell you how depressed I was, and I didn't know how to deal with it.
Pastor's not supposed to say that word.
I know, I know. Welcome to the 21st century, and I'm not that kind of pastor.
Hey, not easily spoken. Let's talk about it.
Just depressed, and I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't tell my wife. I didn't tell my kids. But the way that I got out of it is teaching. Mm. That was my saving grace. I found something that brought me so much fulfillment. And those young people, my students, they didn't even know it. They were ministering to me. That every time I went in to teach, they were ministering to me. The laughter, the jokes, it was so different that it ministered to me. And so I found something that was recreational in the area of my purpose. So if you want to find something that is going to be safe, find something that is recreational in the area of your purpose.
I love it. That right there was a tag. If y'all want to tag anything, I like that. Okay.
Can I give you one?
Yeah, come talk to me.
Okay. So there was a time in which on this side, I was depressed too.
Okay.
And I found myself being at a place in which I couldn't, I was watching TV one Monday morning, and I found the TV was watching me, and literally I felt my body go numb. It was like a out-of-body experience where I saw everything moving around me, and I couldn't move. And literally, let me tell you what it looked like. Remember that was that movie Get Out? Is that movie Get Out?
Yeah.
Right. He drunk the tea.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And he can't move.
Mm-hmm.
And you see everything moving, and tears are coming.
Rolling, yeah.
That's exactly. Whew. Hold on, let me back up. I didn't know it would hit me like that. That's exactly what I felt. I couldn't move, yet tears are rolling down my eyes, and I didn't know why. And it scared me because I am naturally a bubbly individual. I am naturally a happy dude. I am naturally an outgoing individual. So I could not understand it. And right then and there, I told my wife, I said, I need counseling because I didn't know how to get out of it. Counseling, professional counseling, helped me to deal, to cope, and to build mechanisms in my life where I don't get back there. That's a weird place. That's like if there was something wrong with my kid at that particular time, I would not have been able to move. That scared me.
Mm. Mm. So you said you saw counseling at a point, because this is what happens, and I'm sure there are other leaders and pastors, and I say those words synonymously but independent, because someone listening today is, they say, well, I'm not a pastor, but I am a leader.
Yes.
And there's going to be someone that says that, I'm not a leader that I want to be, but I happen to be a pastor. So we're saying those words synonymously but
Absolutely.
independently. So if you're listening,
Yes.
that's why. There's going to be a leader, a pastor, a particular pastor on this, and that's listening, and says, I want to take care of my well-being, but I'm afraid that it might hinder my net worth, because someone may see me go to a counselor and they may say, the pastor who's supposed to be the superhero indeed does have kryptonite. He's not worth our attention anymore.
Yeah, let me speak to that. There is, I love psychology because it gives us an opportunity to study the way people think.
Mm-hmm.
There is something that is powerful about people that are confident, period. End of story.
Right.
Confidence is attractive. You can be confident smoking a joint and somebody, 5 people, 10 people, or whatever, can walk by and be like, you know what? I'm going to smoke one too. Why? Because you seem very confident in doing it.
Right.
The whole marketing campaign for cigarettes was based off of confidence and influence. Right.
True.
So, it is very possible for you to, in your confidence, be authentic and real with the issues of struggling with depression and all that stuff, and still maintain a sense of strength in people's eyesight, because they'll say, man, that's a strong thing, man, for you to do that. Woo, for you to say that, man, that's strong. And at the same time, free them up to make some of the same conclusions, or come to some of the same conclusions. You don't lose by doing it. You lose when you don't. Because in people's heads, they think that you're perfect. You know that you're not perfect. How long will it take for you to disappoint them? It's only a matter of time before you're broke in front of them, or there is a failure that it's in front of them, right? And at that point is disappointment, because they never perceive that you, of all people,
Right,
shouldn't do that. Reality of it is that me, of all people, should be in counseling somewhere. That is the thing that you got to be able to understand. And you got to understand that you don't do things just because you're trying to gain the applause of people or win over the applause of people, because your value is in you. Your value is in how God values you, not in how people applaud you. And if we could separate the difference between the two, psychologically, we'll be more healthier. I know that there are times in which I need to pull away and I need to say, look, I love y'all. Party's house, I love y'all. Peace. Brother man, got to pull away. Because if I don't, I will kill myself. And at the end of the day,
gonna replace you.
They will replace me.
Mm-hmm.
This is the tragedy of Pastor Andrew, right? This is the tragedy. That's his name, right?
Yes, Pastor Andrew, yes.
This is a tragedy. The tragedy is the church replaced him. His wife and his kids will never be able to find a replacement. Church will roll on. They will eat fried chicken and potato salad at your funeral. And then after a while, the first lady is no longer the first lady. And the first kids are no longer the first kids. And they're going to have to get along with their life without husband or without daddy. But pastors are interchangeable. Husbands and fathers are not. So what is the most important thing for me to build up, for me never to lose?
The position or the person?
I can lose my position as a pastor.
Come on, talk.
I don't ever want to lose my relationship with my kids and with my wife because they are most important. And at the end of the day, when I cannot pastor the way or preach the way that I preach right now, have the kind of energy, and I'm in my 70s and all that stuff, not one of those people, especially if I back away from being a pastor, they're not coming to take care of me. My kids are. My wife will. They're not. They will lose sight of me because it'll be another fly pastor that's gonna come in. He's
with ripped jeans on,
with ripped jeans, and he's gonna be nice, and he's gonna be la la la, and he is gonna require their attention.
Yeah.
Right. So the most important thing, if we keep the main thing, then we'll be okay. The main thing is if I have a relationship with my family, then that is the most important thing, not the church.
I think that alone just saved a lot of people, Pastor.
Yeah.
That right there alone.
Yeah. If you do commit suicide, think about it. Are you committing suicide because of your church and the responsibilities therein? Or are you committing suicide because you don't love your wife and you don't love your kids and your kids don't love you? Reality of it is that you will allow for the pressures of the church to take you away from the loving responsibility that you have towards your family. And you can't do that. If there's any, oh God, please listen to me. Leader, pastor, listen to me. Please listen to me. If there is a time in which you have to choose between the two, choose your family because they will be there, and make the decision based off of how they're going to fare, because they are going to always have an indelible impression about not having closure with their loved one. You are leaving the situation, but it is irresponsible for you to do that because they are still going to have to live with it. And now they're going to have to get counseling because you're not there and you left their life and exited their life so abruptly. The church will go on. Your family is most important.
The things you didn't deal with, they would have to.
They are going to.
Have to. Wow. Okay. Talking about,
Woo!
I know, right? That was
heavy.
That was heavy. That was thick right there. Okay. You mentioned something in that. I want to go back to that. The applause, the assassination, the applause, the assassination, trying to live between both and make sure you're not too stuck to either one of those. How, as a leader or pastor, do you manage the amazing highs that come with it all, but then also the lonely lows that come with it all?
This statement, and I don't know who said it to me. Maybe I read it somewhere, but it stuck with me a long time ago. It said, You're never as good as what they say you are, and you're never as bad as what you think you are.
Okay.
Keep it level. Keep it level. Keep it level. And I think it was an athlete that said it. I don't know if it was Kobe or somebody. It was Coach Kobe. And that helps me to understand. Here's another test of scripture, and I always go back to it. When I saw it, it helped me to recalibrate how I even look at the applause of people. The Bible says in John, the 2nd chapter, after Jesus did the whole wedding at Cana thing and the changing of water to wine and all that stuff, the Bible says that he did more miracles there, and people were coming to him and applauding him and things of that nature. And the Bible says that he took no thought of their applause because he knew what was in man. And then if you read on further, it said, and he knew what they would do. So 2 things. He knew that the psychology of man is to be fickle. So you can't weigh the value of who you are based off of people's applause. Here today, gone tomorrow. And he knew what they would do. He knew that the ones that would applauding him 3 years later would say, give us Barabbas, right? He knew what they would do. And so he did not predicate his ministry on their applause. He didn't predicate anything that he did off of their applause. He predicated it off of the fulfillment of the purpose on his life. So if I am fulfilling my purpose in life and I get applause, great. But I am not predicating whether or not I am successful or not off of people's applause, because that is fleeting.
Let me ask you this to follow that up. Great point. Lives are being saved right now. I can feel it. So when it comes to what I do and who I am, How do I separate the two? Because many leaders, many pastors, many people, period, in all spectrums of life, we often identify, and our self-worth and our self-value is based on what we do, either for others or just period, the things that we give to life to say, this is my validation and my place. And we confuse that. I think a lot of times if we don't know, I say it often, if I'm stripped of being able to speak, if I'm stripped of being able to write or just impact people, just doing that thing I love to do, I will be okay because I love me and I know me and I know just my core. Those are things that I do, but that's not who I am. And it also gives me an invisible wall because I can love someone all day long and give them the best of me. But I know there's an exclusive wall that says, unless they are in, they don't get that part of me. So a part of me is safe. How do leaders, people, pastors understand what they do does not necessarily define who they are?
Oh gosh, yeah. So here's the deal. It is very easy to get wrapped up in what you do, especially if you do it well. Right? Because the productivity of it, the fulfillment of it, releases oxytocin in your body. It's the feel good.
That
like,
dopamine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, another shot of that. Ooh, another shot of success because it makes you feel good. Check off boxes of goals. Right? Add on to that applause. Oh my gosh. And people applauded before. Oh God, you want some more? Give me some more. All right, you want some more? We become drug dealers. Right? Because we are giving people that feel good experience too. Right? Oxytocin is being released, and oxytocin is the thing that it's the feel good. It's when you see somebody that does something good for somebody else, and man, you're like, oh man, that was so good.
Yeah,
It's that is that
Oh.
that's what's released in your body when you see that. When you do that, and people applaud you, that's what's released in your body. So we're drug dealers to each other. They give us the drug with the applause. We give them the drug with the activity. Right? And so we are dealing each other that drug.
It's a dance, yeah.
It's a dance. What we've got to do is to not get wrapped up in the way we are receiving it, because that's just one way. I can also get that same feeling when I go to a retreat center and I'm by a lake or a river and I got a book in my hand and I got a tree over me.
That me time.
And that me time. And I started thinking, oh my God, this is so dope. And that oxygen, boom, it just starts releasing in my body because I feel alive. I feel alive because I'm fulfilling purpose. And at the same time, I'm being fed by the fulfillment of that purpose. And it had nothing to do with somebody's applause. It has everything to do with that feeling, that sense of discernment that I get from the Father that says, well done, thy good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. I can now make you rulers of many, but the few things is not necessarily the people that applaud you. The few things is your gift, your talent, your sanity, your thought processes, your intelligence, your reasoning, your purpose, your fulfillment, the gifts that God has given to you. How are you using them and utilizing them?
Say that again. Say that again. The things that you have that God looks at and said you've been faithful over. Say that again. I think that's important.
Yeah, the stuff that God looks at you, because he said that when he's talking about the parable of the talents, he gave 1 5, 1 3, 1 1, right? Each one according to their several ability, right? So now I've got talents that God has given to me, right? And what am I doing to multiply them? Right? Am I, I just got finished studying. I just got finished reading this book. Ding, oxytocin, right? I've just enhanced my knowledge base by doing that. Hey, I saw something on YouTube. I was watching something about the psychology of women, and I understood my wife a lot better. Ding, man! I told my wife the other day or yesterday, my sons had testing. ACT testing, 7th grade and 9th grade, they start testing them.
Right.
So they get practice. Right. And so she said, I'm gonna make sure that you guys have breakfast because you guys have to have a good breakfast. And I was like, oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna get in the kitchen and I'm gonna help her to do the practice. Just help her to do breakfast. And I got up and I got in the kitchen and I was like, all right, babe, So you're gonna wrap them, you wrap them, or you put it in the tortilla because it was breakfast tacos. You put it in the tortilla, and I'm gonna wrap it in the aluminum foil. She was like, oh, and I was like, ding, right? And I was like, yeah. Then the kids came down, and they was like, oh my God, Dad is in the kitchen. I was like, I know, ain't it dope? Ding, right? And I'm wrapping it up. And I said, also, there's some stuff in the refrigerator because I stop off at Walmart and I got you some fruit. I got your blackberries. I got your
Brain food.
bananas.
Yeah,
I got
yeah,
your
yeah.
brain food. Hey, did you get this? Did you get this? And they're like, oh, snap. And I was like, hey, Caleb, I got that peanut butter and jelly sandwich for you, man. And he was like, oh, snap, right? Ding, 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 ding. And they left and I prayed for them and I felt fulfilled. I hadn't preached to anybody. I hadn't taught anything. I didn't open up a scripture, but I felt fulfilled in knowing that my family was good. That is ding, ding, ding. That is awesome. I don't need the applause of men because I've already been filled up.
By those main
things.
Right.
Reading a book, hearing something that is going to impact your life, being inspired by people who are inspired by what you say or what you do or whatever. It's just those kinds of things brings the dings. Let me say this also, that the reason why we look for the applause of people is because of those things are not in existence in our lives.
Wow.
So you will find that men that will spend more time at work versus at home is because they get more dings at work than they do at home. I remember a leader said this.
So where do you get your dings?
Yeah, exactly. Where you get your
where do you
dings, right? He said this. He says they was looking for a house. Went to the house, and the house was totally not manicured and all that stuff. But the wife was there, and she was kind of taking them on a tour. And after they left the house, he said this to his wife. He said, the husband has a mistress. She said, how do you know? And he said, because where you invest in is where your heart is. And if he didn't invest in his home, then his heart was somewhere else.
Very true.
So now,
and that's man talk one-on-one.
That's man talk one-on-one.
Yeah, real
right?
talk. Yeah.
We are revealing who's got our heart by who's got our investment. Right. So now, wherever you are being productive at, and this is man talk, psychology of man. Wherever you are productive is wherever you will spend more time in doing it because you get the ding. Right. If men don't feel productive in their relationship, they don't spend a lot of time in investing in it. They don't feel productive in it. Right. But those are the places in which you need to work to become productive. So you need to look at your family relationships like it is your business and work it. Right. If you got something that happens within the business, you're going to do everything that you can to be able to become better. You do market analysis, you do research, you do focus groups, you do all that stuff so you can gain more knowledge and information about the business and the people that you're ministering to or selling product to. Right. That is the kind of work that you put in. What kind of ding did you get out of it? Man, I got an uptick in sales today. Why? Because you put work in it. That's the same kind of work and effort that you put in the home. You want productivity at home by osmosis, not by work.
Right.
And so we've got to be able to put the work in the gardens that we live in so that we can get our dings.
Question. So we're gonna massage this for a minute.
All right.
The dings, right? So most people, we're gonna talk everyone, right? Most people honestly don't know what makes them ding.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna set it up so you can slam dunk it, right? Let me be point guard. He gonna be, the power forward real quick. All right. So most people don't know what causes them to ding. And in another sense, a lot of times we try to unplug from the world, from social media and all those things. Say, I'm gonna go on a 7-day social media fast, or I'm do this and do that. But what we don't know is, in turn, what can we plug into that'll rejuvenate us and give us that life back? To elaborate on your point, how can we find those things that are really already there that gives us our dings?
So, number one, prayer.
Okay.
Now, when I said prayer, immediately a lot of people went towards requests. What I ask God, gotta ask God, ask God. But that is a Western perspective of what prayer is.
Okay.
Western perspective says that God is a genie in the bottle. You just go and request. But Jesus says that he already knows what you need even before you come to him. So the issue is not the need. The issue, the Hebrew concept of prayer is introspection.
Mm.
I know that is a huge deal. That Western people, we don't think introspection is prayer. When I get alone and I shut everything off from the world and I just begin to introspect and to think, I think about not just gifts and talents, but I think about what brought me joy today. Why did it bring me joy? Those deep thoughts of what brought me pain today. Why did it bring me pain? How has God really blessed me today? How has my life been blessed? Man, where was I 10 years ago? Man, I remember. See, all of that.
That's the renewing of the mind.
Is the renewing of the mind.
Yeah,
It is recreation. It is recreation. It is recreating. I've got to go back and recreate the moment to know why it was that impactful for me. That is how you, that's prayer.
The of it all, the again.
Yeah, the again.
Yeah.
That's prayer. Prayer is going to the place of introspection because God is introspective. God, before he says anything, he thinks. No man knows the mind of God except the Spirit of God, that the Spirit of God moves into the mind of God to understand how God thinks and then begins to move in us to convey the mind of God and the thoughts of God into the hearts and the minds of man. That is introspection. When God is introspective and we are introspective, we meet on the road of peace and tranquility. Because things start to make sense now, right? And in that world of prayer and meditation and introspection, now my words are filled with gratefulness versus frustration.
I think this is good too, because God himself showed us, he demonstrated this at the beginning of time when he created and he stopped, introspected, looked and said, what, Pastor? It is good.
It is good.
It is good.
Everything was, it is good. It is good. It is
He
good,
showed
it is
us
good,
that.
It is good. And then he rested.
And he
rests.
Come on, Pastor. Come on. That was another setup, y'all.
Yeah. Rest.
Okay.
Rest is not the absence of thought. Rest is the absence of work. Work is you doing, there are certain things that you do from your conscious or your subconscious.
Okay.
All right. Your subconscious behavior is your default mechanisms of your life. Actually, your life is built off of your subconscious because that's stuff that you do default. So when you're driving, you're not focused driving all the time that you're driving, especially if you hear a ding, especially if you pick up your phone, especially you're not focused. You're subconsciously driving, right? Consciously is the part of you that tries to fight against your subconscious. So we're consciously having a conversation right now, right? But there is subconscious work that's a part of it because subconsciously we don't know that we are conveying basically what we have been meditating on all day and all week, all year for that matter. Subconsciously, we're conveying certain things. That's why when you said, hey, are you ready? Did you go through those questions? I was like, yeah, I didn't, because let's just work. Because subconsciously, I know where I have been and I'm ready for this kind of conversation because subconsciously, I've been thinking about this. Not when you said we were going to do the radio, but before you said it, because I've been thinking. When I work out, there are times in which I'm working out and subconsciously I'm thinking about something else because I'm not even there. I'm pumping iron, but subconsciously
Exercising your mind at the
I'm
same
exercising
time.
my mind at the same time, right? I'm in another place. Um, that is the space and the place of rest. Rest does not mean that you're not thinking, right? And this is where we miss it because we think to not think is us resting. That's you, there's a concept called entropy.
Mhm.
Entropy says that everything bends towards chaos naturally.
Okay.
In the universe, everything bends towards chaos naturally. And so now you've got to be able to work it in order for chaos not to consume you,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So even though I'm not working on my craft or working on and that work that is producing money for me, even though I'm not working on that, I can work on the main thing that actually produces my value.
Yeah.
And that's my thought. And I can work on that anywhere. I can be in the river or swimming. I can be anywhere that I can create moments and opportunities and atmospheres in which I can be introspective is rest.
Wow. This is good stuff. Talking about mental health, personal awareness, talking
Oh
about
man.
faith, and overall, we're talking about the human experience. Let me ask you a question, Pastor. Now, when it comes to faith leaders, here's something that's often said, right?
Bring it.
Whatever you do, don't quit.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you do, don't quit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I got to ask, is that statement, is it a fair one to make, or ultimately does the idea cause more harm than it helps?
Oh gosh. Now this is a great, this is a loaded question.
I know it.
I want every leader, every pastor, everybody that has a leader or a pastor, or everybody that is a leader. I want you to listen to me when I make this statement because this is going to be a powerful statement.
Yes, sir.
I thought about this. I literally thought about this. Is it that we preach and teach and or speak from our personalities, or do we speak from realities? Let me explain.
Mhm.
My personality is a don't quit personality. Uh, it was I grew up in the city of Chicago. You had to have a don't quit
Shut
personality.
down.
Yeah, Chi-town. You had to, there is no quit. Quitters, you don't get no street cred if you're quitting, right? Football. Yeah, I play football, and playing football, you play through pain
Mhm.
because number one, because you can't let down your teammates, but number two, because the second string and the third string are just as hungry. They're waiting on you, and
Take
you
your
may
spot.
not get your
Right.
spot back,
Right.
right? Especially if they perform better than you. So don't give it up. So don't quit, right? So there's this grind that's in all of us. Athletes have it, entertainers have it, whatever, and some preachers have it, right? And that's what we train ourselves to do. But that may be personality. It is very possible for you to be playing on an injury that if you do not rest, it can turn into a tear and ultimately rip your career away from your life. I was just talking to a young man today when I went over to the church. He's 17 years old and he's got the rub thing and he's rubbing, it's what you rub off your if you have a pull or something like that, or
Right.
a
Right.
strain
Scar
or whatever.
tissue, all
Scar
that. Yeah.
tissue.
Right.
He's rubbing. And I was like, "Oh man, what you doing, young man?" I know what he's doing. He said, "Man, I Pastor, so I was working out and I tinged my hamstring a little bit, and I was doing this work in front of coaches, and I pulled something. I got to do, another workout in front of coaches today." I was like, yeah. I was like, and you thought you were young, and the team was just a little thing, and you can get over it. He was like, yeah, I did. I was like, and now you're learning.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're learning that if you don't take care of it, it could turn into something that's a lot worse. He's like, yeah. That is what we do. Quitting is us walking away from it, never to pick it back up again. Pausing is us walking away from it until we get ready to pick it back up again. And we've got to be able to discern the difference between the two. Sometimes it is best for me to walk away from something because in doing so, I am walking into something else. And that pause in between is going to help me to be ready for my something else. You cannot, boxers Boxers will train, what, 6 months or whatever, depending on when the next fight is, so they can be in tip top shape for the next fight. They will rest the day before. They won't even have sex because it'll take their legs day before, right? Why? Because you've got to be at your optimal shape. So there is quiet and there is peace and there is rest before the next fight. What we don't do is rest between fights. That's not quitting, that's resting.
That's resting. Powerful stuff. Okay. Let me ask you this. I'm going to throw a scenario at you and see how you take it. You got time to do that. We got
Throw it.
about a couple of more questions in here, y'all. Hope y'all enjoying this conversation on mental health and faith. So, Pastor Winfield, you're in a room full of pastors needing advice. What do you say to the young pastors who are excited about the journey but not aware of the trouble ahead? What do you say to the pastors who have fought the good fight, but they don't see that their sword is dull and now it's time to sharpen their axe before it's too late? And then what do you say to the seasoned pastor who wants to rest and possibly eat from the tree they have planted, but do not know if they're required to die with the dream?
Actually, I can make a quick statement and walk away from the room.
Talk to me.
I would say to all the pastors, I want every young person, every person that's in the middle of the fight, and every person that's at the end. I'm going to give you 30 minutes to 40 minutes, and I want everybody to go around the room, and I want you to meet and greet everybody that is in that particular stage. I'm going to give you another 30 minutes, and I want you to talk about your experiences. I'm going to give you another 30 minutes, and I want you to minister to each other about your experiences. And I won't have to say a word.
The human, experience,
because
human connection.
Each one is the answer to the other person.
Wow, powerful.
The older man can look at the younger guy and say, hey, man, look, I know you're young now and you got energy out the wazoo, but you're going to burn out soon. This is not a sprint, son. This is a marathon. You don't have to preach your best sermon all in one day.
Right.
Like, you don't have to preach all your best stuff all in 1 month. You got a pastor for 20 years. The hard part is trying to preach something for longer than 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
You only predicated to do it just, in 1 month, man. Don't burn out. Let me tell you how to pace yourself. The one in the middle, the young one can tell her, hey, you just need to add a little bit more creativity to what you're doing. How about you try this? How about you try this? How about you try this? Because that person's issue is, I've ran out of ideas. I don't know what else to do.
That's why the sword is dull.
That's why the sword is dull. So how do I get into the room with people who are energetic and creative, who have not gone through the vicissitudes that I have, and just hear creativity? Because creativity births creativity. I got to be around it in order for it to birth. And then that person has got to tell the older person, hey man, I know you don't want to let it go because you built great equity in it. And I know that you don't have anything to rest on. But we, my generation and the younger generation, is strong enough to be able to continue what you started.
Wow.
Rest on us.
Rest.
We got you. We got you. The greatest thing probably that you could tell an older pastor that wants to retire but just don't have people to say, we got you, is to say, we got you. And then to prove to them how we got you. Let's devise a game plan so that you can sit down, go from standing up to the chair.
And that takes us back to full circle, the administration.
Absolutely. Being able to administrate all this, it takes a whole lot. It takes people to come alongside you. So we find this thing happening in the church world right now, in which we are partnering with people who are mental health professionals. As a Pentecostal, you got to discern whether or not to cast the devil out of somebody or to provide professional counseling, because sometimes they may look like the same. right? Responding to something out of anger, out of frustration, or because you don't know what to do with it, just simply says that you haven't mastered the possibilities. I've got to help you to master the possibilities. That's the reason why we have mental health professionals. It's very possible for people to be suffering with depression and silence and they don't know it because we have different ways of manifesting that. So when a person comes along and says certain things about this is a sign, really? I can catch it before I become the guy in Get Out, not able to move, right?
Right.
Because there were signs leading up to that that I did not take advantage of or I totally dismissed. If my wife last night we were coming back from the Fort Worth Art Festival, and that was our way of chilling last night. We just like, oh man, it was a long week. Oh God, so much. I was like, let's kick it. So we went to the art festival and sat there and watched the jazz and had a blast. On the way home, my gas light came on, boop, and she was like, babe, you need some gas. Maybe you need to get some gas tonight so that you won't have to get it in the morning, because in the morning it'll be rainy, it'll be but it's nice now. And I didn't. Times past, I just would have said, yeah, I get it tomorrow. But because I have learned to listen to those who are highlighting signals, I said, oh, I'll get it right now. I'm going to go get it right now. Got it last night. So when I got in the car this morning, that's one less thing I had to worry about today because I listened to the signal yesterday.
Wow.
It is a life principle that life is always giving you signals of things that you need to take care of. Because if you don't take care of it, it is going to stall you on the side of a road.
Too busy driving that we fail to stop and get gas.
Boom.
Wow. Okay. So let me ask you this. As we're coming to a close, I sound like a pastor. I hate when I sound like that.
Yeah, embrace it.
Share your thoughts on the cause, and we've kind of done that too, but share your thoughts on the cause and the effects of stress, depression, loneliness, and anxiety within the pulpit in ways pastors can seek help.
Oh, gosh, that is so broad and so loaded. Effects of stress.
Yes.
Let me say this to the pastor and to the leader that can't sleep.
Okay.
You close your eyes, but you don't really rest. You wake up tired, as if you didn't sleep. You are dealing with an inordinate amount of stress. Now, some of it you can't pray away. Some of it is just your lot.
Okay.
It's just your lot. I've learned how to just say to my life, it's just your lot, right? And I've got things happening in my life that people have no clue what's happening. When I told one person, they was like, how are you dealing with all of that? And I'm like, it's just my lot. It's my lot. When I understand that certain things are just par for the course, then I'm able to embrace it a lot more and to just rest. That's number one. So stress kills rest. Stress kills rest. So you got to understand that there are certain areas in which you're just going to have to learn how to deal with that level of stress. There's another level of stress that you're going to have to be able to counsel your way or seek professional help to help you to unpack all of the stressors that you're dealing with so that you can have a better way of attacking it. Because sometimes stressful situations happens because we have not been conflictual with it. We didn't face it.
Face what's facing you.
Absolutely. You got to face it. And if you don't face it today, there will be no peace tomorrow. That's why the Bible says, Ecclesiastes, there's a time for everything under heaven, a time of war and a time of peace.
Right.
If David does not happen, Solomon cannot live without stress and peace. David has got to fight some things so that Solomon can be at peace. Solomon's name, by the way, means peace. He can build temples because David fought for the land so that you can build a temple. So there is a time of fighting and there's a time of rest, and you got to learn how to do that. So stress impacts that. Stress also impacts your thought. A lot of pastors, I won't say most because I don't know most, but a lot of pastors, because I know a lot of pastors, there are times in which they preach out of their frustration, which means that they can't deliver a word that is tailor-made for people, but they deliver a word that is more about their frustration. You cannot allow for the toxicity that is operating in your heart to come through your mouth.
It becomes abusive preaching.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Or fussing.
Fussing, yes, sir.
Fussing. And people are in the audience like, whoa, who is he talking to? Oh my God, somebody must have made him angry, right? They don't get a message through. So you got to be able to filter that, because if you don't deal with your stress and your frustration levels, either through counseling or through recreation and prayer and spending time in introspection and all that stuff, then it's going to come through your preaching. You don't want that to happen. The impacts of it, stress can stress out in your home, right? So you come home and and the kids, and this is not just for pastors, this is for leaders, period.
Leaders, yes, sir.
You are vomiting on your kids, vomiting on your spouse, because of the stress that you had at home. That means that you need to find a space that you can unwind and unplug. Sometimes you can't do that through traffic because traffic is just as stressful. So when you get home, you got to find a spot, have a healthy conversation with your wife and with your kids about a safe space to unwind. Right.
Yes, sir.
Or if you're a wife and you've been working and you got to come home and or whatever, have a conversation with your spouse or with your kids about safe spaces to unwind. Let mama unwind just for a second. Right. I came home the other day and my wife said, "Babe, I got some bad news." I said, "Okay, I'll be ready for it in 30 minutes."
That's important.
I'll be ready for it in 30 minutes. I can't take no more bad news now because I won't respond to it in wisdom, right? It'll be an emotional response versus a wise one, right? So I've got to make sure that I don't allow for stress, too much stress, to impact my preaching. And last thing, stress can impact your health. One of the main reasons why pastors, you'll find pastors that are overweight. You'll find pastors who are struggling with their health, liver, heart, mind, brain, strokes, all of that stuff, is because we are carrying around too much stress in our bodies. Your body automatically drips cortisol into your stress. It's supposed to stop at a certain level, because the reason why it drips the cortisol is to warn you that you need to do something. That's the stress level that raises up if a dog is chasing you or a lion is coming after you, right? That stress goes up, and your body says, we got to respond. We either got to fight or we got to run, fight or flight, right?
Or freeze, yeah.
That's the or freeze, right? That's the reason why those stress levels increases. But if you continue with that, it creates heart disease, because the body was never designed to live there. I should never live, put it like this. I shouldn't say never. I wasn't designed by God physiologically and biologically to always live in fear, because fear increases that stress level, right? So what I've got to do is to be able to attack those things that I think that I am afraid of.
Wow.
Because fear is false education appearing real.
Say that one more time.
Fear is false education appearing real.
Wow.
I shouldn't be afraid of it because I'm designed to have dominion over it.
Conquer it, yeah.
Conquer it, right? David is not afraid of Goliath. That frees him up to be his optimal self in order to fight Goliath. If he's afraid of Goliath, then he's going to try and put on Saul's armor and use Saul's sword. But he is so much at peace with God and with the gifts that he has that he seeks not to be like somebody else. And in the context of peace, he can fight now, right? In his grace and win, because he's not trying to be somebody else.
There it is. There it is. Let me ask you this final question. Maya Angelou said this, Pastor, and I always like to bring it full circle, not just based on what you talk about, but who you are. That's why we started with what is it like to be you, and why do you do what you do, all right? Maya Angelou said this: when you get, you give, and when you learn, you teach. Pastor, father, husband, by way of Chicago through Las Vegas, now here in the DFW area. So many things to so many people. What, in all of your experience, have you learned?
Not to get frustrated with where I am, and certainly not to respond to where I am off of limited information. I did not know by leaving University of Illinois in Champaign and coming to Chicago that it would lead to me going to Las Vegas, ultimately coming to the DFW area, ultimately pastoring where I am right now. But every place where the sole of my feet have tread, every step that God has had me on and in has been divinely ordered. So if I step in my life, I've stepped in some mud, and I've been so frustrated about the mud and about the dirtying up of my step, not knowing and understanding that the mud was caused by rain, and the rain came at a season, and the rain came out of a cloud, and the same wind that blew the cloud in is the same wind that blows the cloud away. And it's the same wind that dries the ground for the next step. Now, if I only get caught up in the mud in that one step, then I never take the next step. And the next step could be a lot cleaner.
The one before.
Presence, absolutely. So life is like that. Never get caught up in the mud.
Drop a clue bomb for that one. All right. Okay. So, last part that I'm stuck right there. With the grace you have been granted going forward, what do you hope to teach?
What do I hope to teach? My personal mission statement is I transform lives, I build leaders, I strengthen families by helping people to discover and live in the grace of God that's found in Jesus Christ. What I want them to know is that in Christ Jesus, he makes literally all things new. And that with the personal relationship with the Lord, the more you grow in him, the less you are incarcerated by the things that man or society or this world tries to imprison you in. That is a lesson that I learn every day with every situation and every circumstance that I find myself in. And I just want to teach other people to feel, to operate in that same level of fulfillment. I believe in the best of people. I really do. It's a blessing and a curse to look at people like that, because as a blessing, it helps me to be able to treat people with the utmost respect, all people with the utmost respect. I don't, black, white, Asian, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, well-to-do, not having enough, Chicago, New York, Texas, Las Vegas. It just calls for me to treat all people with the utmost respect. And it calls for me to open up myself to the possibilities of who that person is and the gift of that person, because I believe that every person is a gift. But it's a curse as well, because it's one thing for me to know and to discern that you're a gift, and it is another thing for you to perceive yourself as a curse. And you make cursed decisions, and you have cursed ways, and because you haven't exercised or actualized the person that God is calling for you to become. My role then, what I want people to know is that you're more than what you have become. You're more deep and you're more profound than what you think you are. You can do more with what you got, even if you think you don't have enough. And you can accomplish so much more if you just find out who you are and who God has called you to be.
I love it. Today we talked about, something that was really important. We talked about mental health. We talked about faith. And to a large degree, we talked about the human experience of having rest, of having structure, having administration, not just in leadership, but in our lives, because our mind, body, and spirit is an organization too.
Yes. Oh, that's good.
And so we have to have
That's
that. We
good.
also
That's good.
talked
That's good.
about the family, and that the family is indeed God's first church, and that it should be family first, because what you give to people may not be necessarily who you are, but who God has called you to love, they will always know and receive and want you.
Absolutely.
So be you, find you, maximize you, love you, most importantly. And if God gives you nothing else, he has given you him. And that should prevent us from suicide of the mind, the body, and the spirit. Because if we kill one, in a sense, we have killed all three.
Release people from your expectations.
Yes.
So that they can live free.
Yes. Yes, we didn't talk about what the church and the community can do, but we have to come back, Pastor, and make this. I want everyone to, if you have a chance, please, Pastor, where can people find you? How can they find you? Social media, books you got going on? Talk to the people about that.
Yeah, well, number one, you can come by the church. You can hear this kind of stuff happen every Sunday and every Wednesday. 9 o'clock and 11:30 on Sundays, and then on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. 1270 Woodhaven Boulevard is where the church is. We're in Fort Worth, Texas. 76112 is the address, and so come on by and check us out.
The safe haven of the Woodhaven community.
Come on, I love that. You're the one that dropped that first. The safe haven of the Woodhaven community. And they can find me on Facebook and under Patrick Winfield II, Twitter at Pastor P Winfield Jr., and then Twitter at Patrick Winfield or Pastor P Winfield II. That's where they can find me. And other than that, you can go to our website at the church at www.tphf.org. I have a book that's out called Unleash Greatness, Finding and Tapping Into Your Potential. That's on Amazon, or you can call the church, or you can go to my ministry website, which is P Winfield Ministries or pwinministries.com. So those are all the places and spaces that you can find me.
The one-on-one leadership classes, do you still hold those?
Yeah, I still hold those. I do those once on site. I do those once a year, but this year I'm going to do it 2 more times. I did one in January. I'm going to do it 2 more times. One in possibly June and another one in the fall.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also he has a really, really nice family enrichment conference that are annual. So if you're a family, a person, individual, again, come out, check him out. He wouldn't be here if he wasn't, as I said, just an all-around good dude. And hopefully today, which I'm sure you did, you heard something that would free you, because impact is what we're here for. Yeah. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Be sure to check out Not Easily Spoken blog, again, for more commentary on topics, today's situation and things like this that we've talked about. And if you just like reading, which I think is still good to do, treat it like good food and share it with somebody. That's my only request. And if you want to hear more conversations like this, then don't worry. Be sure to tune in to Not Easily Spoken, episode 102, where we'll, check this out, Pastor, we're going to discuss self-identity, Christ's identity, false identity, the Trinity of truth. I'm going to have to bring Pastor back for that one if you have time.
Can you have a number that people can call if they are struggling?
I do have a number that's very important. Let me get that number. If you are out there and perhaps some reason you're struggling, you wanted to know about who can I talk to, how can I get out and make sure that, I'm not hurting, or if I am hurting, that I can get to some help. I'm gonna give you a number real quick.
Yeah, and let me say this, that if you are out there, listen, there is a difference between counseling and having professional help. And sometimes you do need to go and get professional help. Crisis is a part of life, but walking you through the crisis is going to yield for you a bountiful of wisdom that's going to help you through the crisis. Go ahead.
Yeah, and as Pastor said, be sure to not only release people, but release yourself from the false expectations, whatever they may be. Because one thing we all have in common is that we're sharing and walking through this human experience. Yes, and as the great man beside me said, is mud today. Tomorrow it'll be dry land.
Come on.
Okay, so if you or anyone you know is struggling with depression, thoughts of suicide, or you just need someone to talk to, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. Again, that's 1-800-273-8255. Pastor Winfield, I want to thank you so much for being here. We got to do it again when your schedule permits. Be sure to share this podcast, people, with your circle of influence. And until we meet again, be good to yourself and others, because God is watching. That's my time, ladies and gentlemen. I do thank you for it.